Okay, let's unpack this. We've got what looks like a genuine David versus Goliath story playing out right now in New York City Housing Court.
It really is. We're diving into a fascinating set of sources, emails, very detailed technical reports, court notices, even internal tenant organizing notes.
Yeah, it's all laid out. It shows how one tenant, who goes by Kevin Allan, or sometimes Detective Allan in the notes,
Yeah, yeah, fitting name.
right, how he's taking on this massive corporate landlord, Brookfield Properties, and, crucially, their own utility subsidiary, Metergy Solutions. This is all happening at the Eugene building.
And our mission here really is to pull out the playbook. What are the actual leverage points, the surprising facts this tenant, who's an engineer, by the way, which is key, is using?
He's not just fighting an eviction notice. He's aiming for huge damages, rent abatement. Yeah. The works. We want to see how he's built that case.
So let's set the scene. The core dynamic starts with pressure, right? The tenant, Allan, is dragged into court, supposedly over rent he owes.
But at the same time, the landlord's hitting him with these lease renewals. And the proposed increases are just...
They really are eye-watering. The sources show his original rent was around $7,168 a month.
Okay.
The new offers, they propose month-to-month rates nearing $10,800, or, a 12 or 14-month lease at almost $9,500.
That's an insane jump. We're talking thousands of dollars more per month. That's clearly designed to push someone out, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's immense financial pressure. And you have to understand the timing, the personal context for Allan here.
Right. It wasn't happening in a vacuum.
Not at all. The notes mention he was dealing with significant stress outside of this apartment fight. Things like pay cuts at his job. He's a CTO.
Okay, so career pressure, too.
Yeah, and apparently navigating a pretty complicated property sale overseas in Perth. Plus some personal stuff like a strained relationship with his father.
Wow, that's a lot to juggle while also fighting a massive corporation over your home.
Exactly. And the sources, they do paint a picture of him trying to hold things together. There are notes about him making tea for his partner, Nadia, sleeping on the couch so she could rest better, trying to be supportive amidst the chaos.
It humanizes the whole thing. He's not just a case number. He's a person under immense strain trying to, well, survive this corporate onslaught.
And that brings us to the structural issue here. The landlord isn't just the building management, Brookfield. They also own Metergy Solutions.
The company that provides the utilities for the building.
Precisely. So the same corporate umbrella covers the roof over your head and the meter measuring your electricity.
That just screams conflict of interest, doesn't it?
It's textbook vertical integration. If you have a problem with your bill, who do you complain to? The building. They own the utility company.
Well,
the utility company, they're owned by the landlord who wants you out.
There's no impartial third party there. You're trapped in their system.
And this is where it gets, like you said, really interesting. That conflict directly leads to the smoking gun, the thing that kicked this whole fight into high gear.
The electricity bill, right?
Yeah. Allan noticed his bill suddenly spiked dramatically. He said his typical summer high was maybe $250, which is already quite a bit.
For a New York apartment, yeah, sounds about right for summer AC.
But then, boom. 1 month, it hits nearly $800.
$800 for one apartment's electricity. Something's obviously wrong there.
Seriously wrong. And this is where his engineering background comes in handy. He didn't just complain, he investigated. He started looking closely at the AC units in his apartment.
The PTACs, those big units usually under the window.
Exactly, packaged terminal air conditioners. And what he found was, frankly, shocking. He tested them himself.
Oh.
At this, the units were drawing 9 amps of power continuously, even when they were completely switched off.
Wait, 9 amps? When the power switch is off, how is that even possible?
It points to a major electrical fault inside the unit. And 9 amps isn't trivial, to put that in perspective for you.
Please do.
That's like leaving a couple of powerful space heaters running constantly, or maybe dozens of light bulbs. 247, all year round? Even when you think the appliance is off.
So massive energy waste, and he's being billed for it.
Huge waste. But it was actually worse than just the cost. These faulty units weren't just drawing power silently. They were actively blowing air at 110 degrees Fahrenheit.
When they were supposed to be off, or cooling.
Exactly. Instead of cooling or just being idle, they're pumping out significant heat. An expert analysis cited in the sources concluded this wasn't just a defect.
It sounds dangerous.
It is dangerous. The analysis called it a clear electrical fault and critically a potential fire hazard. That elevates this way beyond a simple billing dispute or a broken AC.
It becomes a safety issue.
Yeah.
Habitability issue.
Absolutely. Life safety. And that changes the whole legal game. Now, was this just his apartment, Unit 37F?
That's the question. One faulty unit is bad luck, maybe.
Right. But Allan started organizing. He talked to neighbors. And guess what? Other residents reported similar issues. Overheating, strange smells.
The sources mentioned a neighbor whose plant died.
Yeah. Apparently, the heat radiating from the unit, even when off, was so intense, it literally cooked her nearby plant.
Okay, so this points to a systemic problem, not an isolated one.
That's the inference. And this is where the leverage really builds. The tenant sources estimate the cost to replace all the potentially faulty PTEC units building-wide.
What are we talking about?
Between $4 million and $6.5 million.
Wow, okay. Suddenly that $55,000 in alleged rent arrears looks like pocket change to Brookfield, doesn't it?
Completely overshadowed. This one technical issue uncovered by one tenant potentially puts them on the hook for millions in repairs and exposes them to massive liability if there were, God forbid, a fire.
So how did he make this stick? How did he make sure the landlord couldn't just ignore it?
Documentation. Obsessive documentation. He didn't just email management. He filed an official complaint with the city through the 311 system.
Creating a paper trail.
A crucial official paper trail. We even have the service request number from the sources, SR 311-243-43450. He reported the electrical fault, the fire hazard.
So now the city knows, the landlord knows, the city knows. It's undeniable. They can't claim ignorance.
Precisely. That complaint locks it in, which brings us to the other side of this coin. The utility fraud aspect, involving Metergy.
Right. The company Brookfield also owns. How does that play out?
Well, because they control Metergy, they control the billing, the data, the investigations, everything.
Yeah.
And the tenant surveys Allan conducted, they revealed this pattern.
Overcharging.
Yes. Like the example you mentioned earlier, a resident getting a $200 bill for a month when they were away for 3 weeks and had literally unplugged everything.
How is that even possible? What's the meter measuring? Ghosts?
Right. It defies logic. And Allan's own usage data was just as bizarre. The records showed his electricity consumption was sometimes 4 or 5 times higher when he wasn't even in town compared to when he was home using appliances.
Okay, that's completely backwards. It strongly suggests the meter isn't just measuring his apartment's usage.
Exactly. Which led Allan to develop a pretty startling theory about where that power was going.
What did he suspect?
He started thinking his meter, Unit 37F's meter, might be physically wired incorrectly, drawing power from the building's common infrastructure.
Meaning, he might be paying for the building's operations.
That was the suspicion. And get this, according to the notes, this wasn't just his own idea. An insider, described as a senior engineer at Brookfield who consulted on the case.
Wait, an insider from Brookfield?
Apparently so. This engineer advanced the theory that Allan's meter, its location near an electrical closet on the 35th floor, was noted as relevant, might be inadvertently powering common area heavy loads. Like
what?
The building's elevators. Or maybe pump rooms.
Hold on. You're saying there's a theory from someone inside Brookfield that this tenant might have been paying the electricity bill for the building's elevators.
That's what the notes claim. It's an incredible accusation. If true, it's not just a mistake. It's potentially massive systemic fraud.
Okay, so Metergy must have investigated this thoroughly, right? Given the implications.
Well, they did something. They tested Allan's meter. The specific meter, serial number 1157408.
And the result?
They reported back. The meter is 100% accurate, working perfectly.
Ah. But hang on, did they test the meter itself? Like, does the little wheel spin correctly? Or did they test what the meter was connected to?
Exactly. That's the crucial distinction. They confirmed the meter was mechanically sound. They did not, according to the sources, investigate the wiring feeding the meter.
So they completely sidestepped the core allegation that the meter, accurate or not, was measuring the wrong thing.
It looks like a classic case of answering the question they wanted to answer, not the one that was asked. It feels like willful ignorance, frankly.
Okay, so Allan has this technical evidence of a fire hazard, evidence of systemic billing issues, this explosive elevator theory. How does this translate into legal defense against eviction?
This is where it gets really clever, legally speaking. Allan realized something crucial about his own tenancy status.
What was that?
He hadn't actually signed a lease renewal for almost 2 years.
2 years. Without a signed lease? How does that even happen?
It sounds like a major procedural oversight by the landlord. But for Allan, it became a key piece of leverage.
How so?
Because if there's no valid signed lease agreement in place for that period, then those massive rent increases they were demanding.
They're not legally binding.
Arguably, no. They can't enforce a rent hike specified in a lease that wasn't actually agreed to and signed by both parties.
So the whole basis for their eviction case, the claim that he owes rent at these inflated rates or that he's a holdover tenant staying past his lease term.
It potentially collapses.
Yeah.
Their claim is based on a premise, a valid current lease at that high rent that might not exist legally.
That's huge. And what about the utility charges from Metergy?
Same logic applies. The sources argue that the agreement to pay Metergy for utilities is typically tied into the lease agreement itself, if the lease is invalid or non-existent for that period.
Then the basis for Metergy's billing might also be invalid.
Exactly. He can challenge both the rent and the fraudulent utility charges simultaneously, all stemming from that lack of a signed lease. It connects everything.
Okay, this guy is playing chess, not checkers.
Yeah.
But it's still a huge risk, right? He withheld rent. How much are we talking?
The sources say it was over $55,000 in alleged arrears over about 6 months. That's a massive amount to withhold. You'd expect the landlord to move incredibly fast to evict.
Especially a big player like Brookfield. They have lawyers on retainer. They know the process.
Right. But they didn't move fast. After the official termination notice expired, the legal precursor to filing eviction, Brookfield apparently waited 66 days before actually filing the court case.
66 days. That seems bizarrely slow for a landlord owed that much money. Why the delay? What does that suggest?
The analysis in the source material points to one thing: fear. Corporate paralysis.
Fear of what? Going to court is their home turf.
Fear of what Allan would bring into court. Fear of discovery. They likely realized he wasn't just some tenant disputing rent. He had technical proof of safety hazards, evidence of potential widespread utility fraud.
And bringing that into open court would be catastrophic for them.
Absolutely. Think about the potential consequences. Legal blowback from the fire hazard issues. The near certainty of a class action lawsuit if the Metergy billing practices were exposed.
Okay, those are bad. But you mentioned a nuclear option earlier.
Yes, the 421A tax abatement.
Right. Explain that again. Why is that so critical?
Okay, so 421A is this hugely valuable tax incentive program in New York City. Developers get massive property tax breaks for building new residential properties, often for decades. It can be worth tens, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars over the life of a building like the Eugene.
Wow. That's a fortune.
It is. But it comes with strings attached. One key requirement is maintaining the building properly, ensuring habitability, and often providing a certain number of affordable housing units.
And if a landlord is found to be engaging in, say, systemic safety violations or widespread billing fraud,
they risk losing that 421A status. The city or state can revoke it. And for a developer like Brookfield, losing that tax break on a major property, that's an existential financial threat. Far bigger than a single tenant's rent arrears, or even the $6.5 million PTAC repair bill.
So the 66-day delay, it wasn't incompetence. It was likely them scrambling, trying to figure out how to contain this, how to avoid court, because the stakes, the 421A stakes, were just too high.
That appears to be the most logical reading based on the sources. They were terrified of the precedent and the exposure.
Makes sense. And did they try other tactics?
Yeah.
The sources mentioned retaliation?
Yes. Classic landlord retaliation, it seems. When Allan started organizing other tenants, forming a group called Fight the Good Fight to share his findings and strategy.
Which is legally protected activity.
Yeah. Totally protected under New York law. But almost immediately after he started organizing, the landlord allegedly cut off his access to building amenities. Things like the swimming pool, the co-working space, the rooftop deck.
That's textbook harassment. Punishing a tenant for organizing is illegal.
Absolutely. And it just adds another layer to Allan's potential legal claims against them, harassment and retaliation, on top of everything else.
This whole thing is just incredible. It really demonstrates the power that one well-prepared individual can have, even against a giant.
It really does. The leverage comes from that combination, doesn't it? Obsessive documentation, the 311 report, the videos he took of the 9-amp draw, keeping every email.
Plus, the technical expertise to find the flaw in the first place.
Right, and the strategic thinking to connect the corporate dots, understanding that Brookfield owning Metergy wasn't just incidental, it was the core conflict enabling the problem.
And finally, the courage. The courage to withhold that much rent, face down the legal threats, and organize others despite the risks.
He effectively turned what started as his utility bill problem into a systemic corporate risk for Brookfield. He forced them to weigh their potentially illegal profit-boosting shortcuts against the potential loss of their massive tax subsidies.
That $6.5 million repair estimate for the P-tax really highlights the cost of them potentially cutting corners, doesn't it, compared to just complying with safety standards in the first place.
Exactly. It exposes the calculation they might have made, hoping nobody would notice the faulty units or the weird billing.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to chew on, really building on this whole 421A angle.
Yeah, think about this. That huge 421A tax break is often justified politically by the requirement that developers include affordable housing units. It's part of the deal.
So if a landlord is terrified of losing potentially hundreds of millions in tax breaks,
Huh?
how does that fear shape their day-to-day decisions? How does it affect their willingness to fix serious safety issues or address legitimate tenant complaints about basic habitability?
Does the sheer size of that financial vulnerability, the fear of losing the abatement, make them more likely to cut corners quietly, hoping to avoid scrutiny, rather than doing the right, safe, legal thing? It changes the incentive structure, doesn't it?
It really makes you wonder, what other vulnerabilities, what regulatory tripwires or financial dependencies exist in your building structure? Things that maybe aren't obvious on the surface.
Something to think about, perhaps, the next time your own utility bill seems suspiciously high, or a maintenance issue goes unfixed for just a little too long. What's really going on behind the scenes?